Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, July 18th edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Of course, brought to you by our friends at Circa. We got a lot to cover here when it comes to the running back market. All the hullabaloo on Twitter from running backs, from professionals, from not football professionals like you and I, Jake. It'll be fun. And, oh yeah, by the way, it's Jake Letarski and I getting set to do our free agent podcast like we do every Tuesday.
Yep.
So
very good to be back, Joe.
Very good to be back indeed. Let's hit the music. Again, welcome everyone to the Tuesday. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 18th edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Circa Sports. Again, alongside me, as we will do every Tuesday moving forward, Jake Letarski. You can follow him at RotoJake on Twitter. Joe Bartley, follow me at JB Fantasy here. And we're waiting to get to the regular season, waiting to get to what our bread and butter will be, which is talking about waiver wire pickups each and every week. Of course, we have to get to that point. And as a result, you can call it stalling podcast, Jake, if you want. Yeah. But I like to think our content is really relevant things.
Exactly. No, yeah. Every week, I mean, we've been doing this for several years now. I mean, I'm going to be creeping up on a decade of waiver wire pods before long. But, yeah, week to week, it's going to be ads and drops during the NFL season. But, you know, we got to keep our sponsors nice and happy, which we are always happy to do, which means a few more preseason shows and hopefully keeping our listeners happy here as well with some draft advice. So today we're just going to talk about, you know, we've all done a handful of drafts early, whether it be best balls or, you know, this doesn't quite apply to the rookie drafts that you might be in, but, you know, whether it's fishbowl, best balls, the Vegas League drafts, everyone's had some draft dilemmas so far. So we're going to go position by position, kind of like a waiver wire show will be. And we're going to be discussing a lot of our player A, player B dilemmas, taking players that are very close in ADP. And generally on this show, when we reference ADP, we're going to be talking about the NFFC, which are paid higher stakes leagues. Those drafts have been going on for a while, and those people have some real skin in the game. So they're going to be, some of the most reliable ADP data out there you can find. So we're going to find real close players, dilemmas that you might actually face in your drafts, and then we're just going to hash it out. We're going to have the argument.
Yeah, and we'll stick to our. Can you hear me all right, Jake? Does it sound fine?
I can hear you a little bit softer than me. Of course, we're going to have some first show technical difficulties with everything being live, but I think we're doing okay. I can hear you fine. Maybe bring the mic up, and we'll be good to go.
Working with a different mic system than we've had in years past, so I'm trying to adjust to that accordingly, and it keeps raising my voice for some reason. Like, do I sound louder now?
Right now, you're perfect.
I'm screaming in my ear, but I guess that's fine. I'll just have to deal with that hellscape for a while. Before we even get to that, and we'll tailor our draft dilemma decisions much like we will in the free agent podcast to come, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends specifically. Before we do that, though, we have some news. And, of course, there's DeAndre Hopkins signing, which maybe we'll talk about at a different point in terms of what his ADP will be. That was with the Titans while I was on live with Alan Slazowski on SiriusXM Radio Sunday. Fast forward to Monday, and we have a bunch of different running back decisions that did not occur, right? We had the Cowboys choose not to sign a long-term deal with Tony Pollard. We had no such thing with Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley as well, too. And it seemed to set the Twitter sphere on fire, much less than what Elon has done over the past 2 or 3 weeks with that platform. But nevertheless, a lot of different conversation. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jake, I'm already annoyed with it, and we're maybe less than 24 hours in, so –
yeah, I mean,
how are we supposed to operate?
We're not hot take guys that have to fill out a 3-hour morning talk show on ESPN. So I'm not going to come out here real hot about running back rights and everything. I mean, that is just the status of the market. It is a supply and demand thing. Is it fair to running backs? No, absolutely not. Is there an easy solution? No, absolutely not. I saw someone be like, all running backs out of the draft start out as free agents, because I mean that is just the way the game of football works here. You use your rookie deal up, and by those 5 years, you are past your prime. And, we don't really need to talk about this too much. I think, there are exceptions to this rule, running backs that are heavy pass catchers that should be valued differently. I'm thinking your Ecklers, even the Packers with Aaron Jones. But even the Packers with Aaron Jones, he took a pay cut, realizing what the market was going to look like here. So, just the reality of the situation. It's unfortunate, and some of these players, hint for later in the show when we get to running backs, will be involved that have really close ADPs with another player of similar outlook who does not have a contract issue that may or may not hold him up. So we'll talk about how to handle that here as the show goes on.
Yeah, we had Joe Mixon take a contract lesser deal as well, too. And
Yep.
This is
His was get cut or take a pay cut, you know?
right. And you look at Dalvin Cook, you have Leonard Fournette, you have Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, Melvin Gordon, probably isn't the same type of player as those guys, but a relevant name. And then there's the J.K. Dobbins and Pollard and Barkley and Eckler. And I mean, we're talking about, I just listed 10 running backs. Maybe Melvin Gordon's not a starter at this point in his career, but close to 10 different starters over the past couple of years who have now found a less than desirable market for that position. And that's just where we're at. I think even the upper echelon guys like Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey, if I'm a GM, I'm paying them. I think Saquon Barkley fits in that category. When Barkley is healthy, he's a difference maker. Is Josh Jacobs? I don't think so. I know he was a difference maker last year for fantasy teams, but the Raiders certainly didn't win. And I think Eckler kind of fits in that category, but he's going to be towards the end of the 30-year-old range, I should say. And, that's uncomfortably a tough spot in history when it comes to running backs. So
nothing but love for Eckler on the show, especially with all he does. You got so many players that are anti-fantasy. This guy actually embraces the fantasy community, so we love this guy. But he's going to have a tough contract negotiation coming up. No beating around the bush there.
Yeah, hey, let's get a word from our sponsors before we dive into the program here from Circa Sports. Get ready for Millions Guaranteed. It's the biggest pro football contest in Vegas, and they're back and bigger than ever before with $14 million in guaranteed prizes only at Circa Sports. Enter Nevada, play from anywhere. 2 ways to win and no rake. Play Circa Million, make 5 picks against the spread each week with a 100% payback to players. The grand finale winner takes home $1 million. Last place takes home $100,000 booby prize with quarterly and full season payouts. $6 million is guaranteed. Join Circa Survivor to select one team each week straight up with no repeat selections. If the team loses or ties, that entry is eliminated. Each team can only be picked once in a season. Go 20-0 or be the last person standing to win it all. Yeah, go 20-0. Have that infamy. Go ahead and get every single pick wrong. It'll be fantastic. Or be the last person standing to win it all. $8 million guaranteed, $14 million in guaranteed prizes. Visit circasports.com for more details. We talked about the news or lack thereof when it comes to the running back signings. It's going to be interesting with the quarterbacks. And I don't know if you've done a whole lot of draft prep. I know when I was doing the Wednesday show with Jim Coventry, well, he's already been in 5 or 6 different expert leagues. I've had an idea of more or less how I want to structure my teams and my strategies moving forward. Mm-hmm. But of course, we're in mid-July, right? And you've done a few, at least the Scott Fish Bowl, and you were at least around while the Vegas drafts were going on this past week.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done a handful of best balls. And, of course, we're in round 19 of the Fishbowl right now. Mm-hmm. We just started our rookie draft for our Staff Dynasty League, which, of course, the Staff Dynasty League and Fishbowl don't really – the formats are so out there that, it's not going to really apply to most of your 12-team redrafts here. So I guess the framing of this decision is a 12-team standard scoring redraft league when we start to talk about these kinds of dilemmas. But the first one we're going to discuss, I actually ran into in Fishbowl, and it's they're unique because you can start 2 quarterbacks, you get 6 points for passing touchdowns, you get points for completions and points for first downs, which makes quarterbacks super valuable in this league. So I drafted 7 overall, and 5 of the first 6 were quarterbacks taken. So that kind of gives you a hint here. But I went a little bit of a different direction, and I didn't take a quarterback until round 3. At which point I had the following dilemma.
And the dilemma you're referring to is Kirk Cousins, Mr. Netflix himself, or Dak Prescott, who are going right around the same spot. Prescott's ADP over the past couple of weeks has been pick 90, so quarterback 11, and then Cousins at 97, so quarterback 12. Not quite a round difference, but if you're deciding between one quarterback or another at that point and you've missed out on those first 7, which if you've listened to my past podcasts, I'd say don't do. I need to have somebody in the Trevor Lawrence and higher tier, and if it's that, I feel like I failed. But if you're avoiding that, if you're choosing to wait on quarterbacks, and you certainly can if you have Prescott as your QB 11 or Cousins QB 12, there's an interesting point to make, I think, for both.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're so neck and neck in this decision here, and I can't fault either way. But we're here to have a debate. We're here to talk about this dilemma because generally, I mean, you and I might look at this differently. I'll take if the market overcorrects the quarterbacks and the top tier falls to maybe the 3rd round, then I'll think about it. But generally, I'm the guy that's going to be one of the last people to take a quarterback and shoot for somebody in that later tier, or shoot for someone like Cousins and Dak that will be serviceable here. So I laid it out and I started comparing the 2 of them. Cousins has surprisingly been more durable than Dak over the last 5+ years. Dak's missing games left and right. Whereas Cousins, the consistency it's been 16 games over and over again, which is surprising to me because I started looking in the numbers. He's always among the league leaders in sacks taken and quarterback hits, and it's specifically quarterback knockdowns. He led all quarterbacks in that category last season. He was number 4 in 2021 and number 2 in 2020. So he's getting tossed around. Really, the offensive line is not giving him a lot of help. So could that, lead to something, as he gets further and further into his 30s? That's really all speculative, at this point in time here. So in the end, you got to pick between the two of them. I ended up going Kirk Cousins, and my reasoning being that I took Justin Jefferson in the first round. I was the first guy, because like I said, Kelsey went first in our league. Then we saw 5 quarterbacks, and then I was up. I went ahead and I took the number 1 overall pick in standard leagues. Now, you could argue that maybe this wasn't the best move in the Scott Fishbowl format, but I like how my team played out. And, Jefferson was my first-round pick and Cousins was my third-round pick. Now, again, Cousins is going to be way lower in ADP once we get to the real thing. But, when faced with this dilemma, I took Cousins because of the structure of my team. But I might actually be leaning towards Dak just a little bit. I mean, looking at the surrounding circumstances of these two teams, both of them lost their RB1, right? Ezekiel Elliott. Well, who knows? Maybe Ezekiel signed back with the Cowboys at, again, a very low market price. Cowboys have a lot of running back situations going on here with Pollard here not agreeing to, the franchise tag or an extension. So that'll get interesting over there. But both lost RB1s here. And also, I mean, Kirk Cousins lost Adam Thielen, who was one of his favorite targets over the past few years. He picked up Jordan Addison in the draft. We'll see what he can bring. But I know that I know that there are a lot of big fans of Jordan Addison around here at RotoWire. He was the 3rd overall pick in our rookie draft that just started on Monday. So
correctly,
yes.
That was the correct number 3 overall pick.
Yeah.
It was a non-super flex league, so no Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, none of that was in there. Mm-hmm. That's who I would take number 3, all things considering.
Yes, exactly. So, we're positive on his outlook. The Cowboys picked up Brandon Cooks. They should have we say this every year, but maybe they'll have a more healthy Michael Gallup, who, by the way, I just took in round 19. Ron Gallup was my 19th round pick in the Fishbowl just a moment ago. So he, the offenses, they change a little bit. I think all things even, I am probably taking Dak, but just based on the structure of this team, I took Kirk, and that's how close it is. Where are you on this debate?
Top 5 QBs. It was Mahomes, Hurts, Allen. Was Lamar in your Scott Fishbowl? Lamar 4 or Fields 4? Was Lamar 5?
Nope. It was Lamar was 4. It was Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Jackson, Burrow.
So you passed over Herbert and Fields to take Justin Jefferson.
And Herbert and Fields went right after me, and then Trevor Lawrence went at 12. So that's kind of where things stood there. So
yeah, I'm taking Herbert in that scenario. And again, in Superflex League, it's got extra stuff with the Scott Fishbowl, as we're all familiar with. Okay. No, I agree with you. Because you had Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins is the right stack play.
Stack them up. Right?
And frankly, you could probably get Jordan Addison too, and that's totally fine. I think Jordan Addison's going to be awesome this year. Count me among the many of the RotoWire people here who is all in on Jordan Addison as a value point. We'll probably talk about that in a later podcast.
Exactly.
What are our favorite values?
I'm too rookie averse for my own good, and plus I had Jefferson and my general disdain for the Vikings overall. I took as much as I could stomach, right? I took as much as I could stomach.
What do you're Mr. Terrace Marshall. How can you be rookie averse? You've been talking about Terrace Marshall for 3 years now.
Yeah. I'm finally ready to give that one up.
Anyway,
I'm going to chalk that one
you.
up as an L. Put it on the board back here. Jake L number. Yeah. Okay.
I'm with you on Dak Prescott, and I'll take that too. One thing, at least, to point out, though, is the Vikings' defense should theoretically be worse. Like, they lost to Darius Smith. Patrick Peterson's no longer there. I know they made a bit of a move to get their secondary better, and you'd think their draft picks from last year should help improve things more. I also think getting the defensive coordinator away from the Dolphins, or I guess he was the Steelers last year. I'm blanking on his name. Help me with it. He was the Dolphins head coach, Brian Flores. Getting Brian Flores as your defensive coordinator should make things better. As a Packers fan, I would much rather have had Brian Flores than anything we have a defensive coordinator this year. Joe Barry, leave, please, for us to have a shot at anything more than 6 wins. So I'm less of the opinion that the Vikings will be in shootouts all the time. Like I even with the Dalvin Cook release and playing through Alexander Madison now. That offense, I think, functions pretty much the same way, which was Cousins right around QB 10, not much higher. And I think Prescott, with the Brandon Cooks part of things, has upside. Now, he had a lot of turnovers last year, but I do think it was kind of fluky. A few of those things can be massaged out. The NFC East is a much harder division. Like how many times you're really wanting to play Prescott against the Eagles or even the Commanders, given their defensive line, whereas Kirk Cousins, you want him against every single NFC North opponent for sure, unless Joe Barry really turned things around, crossing fingers. So I would take Prescott as well too, but it's tough. I don't want a QB at all for this exact reason. It's not very convincing to me to have either one of those. And I think for the other QB dilemma, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Okay, so before we get to that, though, you said you don't want a QB at all. Is that because you're taking one earlier?
Yeah.
Or you find you have a scrubbier one or a lower ADP one in mind for later than that? You always want to get one by then.
I will, unless I have literally fallen asleep in a draft. Yes, it's happened. I am a fantasy analyst, but I will not lie to you. Sometimes that occurs where I
fall asleep in a draft.
We also
like
draft.
To drink beer, so
no, I'm not drinking. I'm a professional in that regard. I'm not drinking beer during the drafts unless it's a friends and family one, which
Wait a minute, what?
No, it's not. I'm way too focused on my draft.
Yeah.
I will take one of the first 7 QBs, and if I have to go higher than their ADP, if I'm being overly aggressive, I don't care, because I think this Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott tier is at such a disadvantage to Trevor Lawrence, not Deshaun Watson per se. I don't want to draft him for other reasons, but Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, like every one of those first 7 guys.
What about Tua? How does he fit into this?
He's in this Kirk and Dak where he's the only one, I guess, with Anthony Richardson.
He's closer to Kirk and Dak than he is to Fields and Lawrence, that's for sure.
But there's that injury part where I'm like, no, I don't want to deal with that. I'll take Justin Herbert 5 rounds earlier, who has a similar upside. I think will be astronomically good from a fantasy perspective, and I don't have to worry about his career might be over with one bad hit. So I will take a quarterback of those first 7 before I ever have to make this decision. And it feels the same way as if you're taking Travis Kelce over any other tight end. Like that's the advantage I think these first 7 QBs are going to have over over quarterbacks in this range. And it's why I think these dilemma things are dumb, because I'm not taking an Aaron Rodgers. I'm not taking a Jared Goff. I'm not taking Anthony Richardson. Yep, I will have one of these first 7 because the difference is so dramatic to me.
Yeah, so I guess when compiling these dilemmas, I went later down the list because I thought we would see more eye to eye in terms of quarterback selection. Yes, I do like these quarterbacks, and would I like to have a top 7? Yeah, absolutely. That would be nice, but I am more likely to let's say, for example, you take Kelce early. It has to be in the first round, right? Then you're building up your running backs and receivers, right? I don't really want to be taking a quarterback after that. Or you're just building up your running backs and receivers as is because of the steep drop-off in running backs you're going to find at about round 4, 5, 6 there. So I am more averse. I don't mind taking or skipping on that tier of quarterbacks and grabbing someone later on and shaking the dice and replacing. Because that's just how how I've done it my entire fantasy career in this stead. Now there has been times like last year in the Stake League draft, or even in the RotoWire Fishbowl, whatever P wants to call it, his emulation of
the
Scott's
Invitational.
Fishbowl. The Invitational, yes, exactly. In those situations, when Patrick Mahomes fell to the 4th round, or I could get Patrick Mahomes for $12 at auction in Stake League, then yes, absolutely, I was ready to take one. But also there was a little bit of a buy low with Mahomes because he was ranked 4 or 5 coming in just because he got hurt and didn't play the whole season. Ooh, spooky, So there are situations, yes, when I'll go ahead and I'll invest. But for the most part, I'm looking at some of these dilemmas towards the end. So the next one I wrote down, which is a group of guys that are all neck and neck. I put 3-4 guys in here. Aaron Rodgers, ADP 118, quarterback 17. Jared Goff, ADP 117, quarterback 16. So we're talking 1 apiece. These are as close as you get. And, right there with them is Russell Wilson. And also, I kind of threw him in late, but Anthony Richardson is 15 in NFFC's ADP over the past month. It goes Richardson, Goff, Rodgers, Wilson, and Richardson they're all within 10 overall ADP spots of each other. And Richardson's only 1.5 ADP ahead of Goff over the last month. Now I find that funny because in Fishbowl, coming back in the 2nd round, I took Jonathan Taylor, and then right after me, Deshaun Watson and Anthony Richardson went. So team 6 started off Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson. Team 5 started off Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson. And then I got to be, all the way back before I took Cousins. They took Richardson before, it's third round reversal here. So, no, I have that right. Yeah. So anyway, so I took Cousins there, but coming back, it got to be this dilemma. It was Rodgers, Goff, or Wilson, because Richardson was off the board here. I had to pick one of those three players, because if I don't take a quarterback there in the fourth round, right, I'm looking at picking up a not starter or a very bottom tier, someone that's definitely not guaranteed to start 16 games. So that's how I originally started this off, with Rodgers, Goff, or Wilson here. Before I go into my thing any further, did you have a preference of these guys?
Yeah, none of them. As we discussed, I will
you gotta
not
pick one though. Gun to your head. Who are you picking?
I'm taking Anthony Richardson of this group, and I was going to say if anyone was to replicate the first year starter Patrick Mahomes numbers, or Lamar Jackson's MVP year, or even Justin Fields.
Watson's breakout, if we go a little further.
Sure, yeah, or Justin Fields. Right? I'm talking about quarterbacks 12 and later. It's Anthony Richardson, and I like the Shane Steichen factor. I think he's going to be a difference maker for the Colts at head coach. We saw what he did with Jalen Hurts. Also, he was the offensive coordinator when Justin Herbert really exploded for the Chargers too. Like, he's got a really good quarterback resume, and I think Richardson has all the gifts. But I have some concerns here, and I'm not expecting Richardson to be that kind of quarterback in year one. That just seems unlikely given what he didn't do at Florida throughout college. So if there's one QB that performs like it, it's Richardson. So I'm fine if people are drafting him if that's the case. You're not excited about Kirk Cousins or Dak Prescott or Derek Carr. By the way, Carr is the guy I like most out of all these veteran options. Mm-hmm. But their veteran options will be safe and reliable. They're going to lose. They're going to lose your league, Jake. You're going to lose because you have those guys, because you're not getting the 35-point games out of Justin Herbert, Mahomes, and Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. But that's fine. If you want to go ahead and choose to lose your games, Jake, I'm all for it.
Yeah, when they're going ahead and starting, your Madisons and your McKinnons, while I'm starting, John.
No one's starting McKinnon. No, that's not who's being drafted in round 7 or 8.
Deep roster here. Yeah, I'm serious. People are going to have to start those. I'll go for some balance. I'll figure out
the Scott Fishbowl is a different realm than anything else that we're actually drafting in.
Fair enough. And this is my first year, so I shouldn't act like I know the thing yet. But it's okay. So in any case, back to the dilemma. I'm worried about Richardson because, again, this draft starts July 10th, right? And as far as we know right now, Gardner Minshew is supposed to be starting week 1. Now, we'll see what happens here. We've barely scratched the surface on training camp. So I wanted to go with something a little more stable. And when it came down to for me, when picking between Rodgers, and I didn't even have the Richardson chance, so because people are high on them. But picking between Rodgers, Goff, and Russell Wilson, I ended up going Aaron Rodgers. And honestly, it was a gut feeling because Rodgers plays the best when he has something to prove here. And, it's looking like the supporting cast might be a little better. We found out today that apparently Breece Hall believes he's going to be healthy for week 1. We'll see about that. That's interesting. He's got some weapons. Lazard followed him over there. Garrett Wilson should be better. He's got the offense on a whole looks like it could be pretty dangerous here. Now, of course, Rodgers way up there in age and less mobile than he used to be. But we'll see how things go with the fresh with fresh scenery there. Jared Goff is interesting. Goff might be more. I don't know. He doesn't excite me a ton, but he should also have some decent games. I mean, the Lions put up a lot of points in a lot of games last year. Goff had a few 35 bangers down the stretch, if I remember correctly, and that definitely helped in leagues where you lost your quarterbacks. Otherwise, Russell Wilson, as much as I'm a big believer in buy low here, I don't know if we can pin that entire thing on Nathaniel Hackett, and I don't know if Sean Payton's going to suddenly turn him around to Pro Bowl caliber quarterback here. So it's interesting here. Russell Wilson is probably going to go undrafted in some redraft formats, but I don't mind scooping him up with one of my last picks and seeing what happens, because we're going to find out in a week or two how it goes with him. So in the end, it ended up being mostly a gut feeling for me with Rodgers, and that's why I went that way. So my two quarterbacks in Fishbowl are Cousins and Rodgers, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Cool. You as a Packer fan too have to root for a little bit of Aaron Rodgers in a different color green.
I actually think when we get to our over-unders at the end of the year, I'm going to take the under on the Jets win total, whatever it is, even if it's 7.5, because that division is so damn hard, and I don't know if it's going to hold up. That whole team is going to hold up the way we think. But as far as fantasy production, and from here on out, I also took Trey Lance super late in this draft. I think he's the ultimate buy low that we can talk. We can do shows like that a little bit later on. But that's where I stood on my quarterback dilemmas.
Any other further comment on those? Or are you cool to move on?
I'm cool to move on from quarterbacks. We spent a long time. We always do this, right? In the regular season, we spend so dang long on quarterbacks and have to rush the rest.
When they're not actually that important in this case. Yeah. Hey, let's take a word for our sponsors here, Blue Wire. Okay, so we're back down. We just talked about the quarterbacks for probably far too long in terms of draft day dilemmas. For a lot of people, it's going to be the running back position and what you're really doing, especially in the first 20 or so picks. Late first round pick, you're probably considering running backs a little bit more as opposed to the early ones where Jefferson and Chase and Kupp and Tyreek Hill are all around. And I think that's where the first dilemma that I wanted to present to you really kind of jumps into play. So you have Jonathan Taylor, who again in recent NFFC drafts is getting taken around pick 14, that's running back 4, or Saquon Barkley, who is pick 15 and running back 5. I'll throw another one at the end here, and I know you're going to like him, but I don't want to confuse you because this is really the important part. We just talked about Barkley to begin the show with, hey, he's got the contract stuff going on. You never really know what's going to happen with all the different conversation that's been occurring with it. But let's just say, pretend right now Barkley's going to play. You're not going to miss week 1 due to contract. How are you figuring out this dilemma?
Yeah, so this is another one that I had because I decided I wasn't going to take a quarterback in the second round. Actually, you know what? I didn't even have this dilemma because Saquon Barkley was taken right before me, and I ended up taking Jonathan Taylor. But they are so close. These guys are neck and neck, and we're talking over the last month in the NFFC, 14.3 for Jonathan Taylor, 14.89 for Saquon Barkley. And all things equal, I think it would be fair to go Saquon Barkley first. I think he might just naturally slightly more talented and slightly more explosive and a little less tread on the tires too, because we talk about the big usage for Jonathan Taylor in college coming into the league, and of course maybe that caught up to him a bit towards the end of last season, but he's fresh. So all things considered, it would be Barkley, a little more explosive, but man, I do think this running back situation here is starting to reach a tipping point, a bubble bursting of something. Something's got to happen here. Saquon Barkley is clearly unhappy. They are way too far apart. Both sides thought that they were getting somewhere, and they most certainly did not. Like, we're talking several million apart, allegedly from what the rumors you look into. So I don't know if there's going to be a tipping point. If Saquon goes and signs that tender, what's to say, he comes up week 1 and maybe his ankle's hurting him a little bit or something like that, and maybe he's not quite good to go. Again, now maybe I'm reading too much into the narrative aspect of this, and who knows what kind of I don't know him personally. I don't know what kind of a person he is, if he would do this or not, but it certainly would be in his best interest to, if he's being forced to sign for below value at the franchise tag and not be able to test the open market, like someone like him certainly does. So there's a lot of that kind of juju at least happening for me, where at least you don't have to worry about that with Jonathan Taylor. And there are a lot of things that, of course, make Jonathan Taylor attractive to me. I'll say it over and over again, to be analysts, we have to think of these players like stocks. And what's the biggest, motto or mantra of a day trader? You have to buy low and sell high. Last year, or what was it, 2 years ago, Saquon Barkley was, number 1 in ADP or close to it, mm-hmm. right? Then he gets injured. All of a sudden, last year, he's about 14 in ADP. I remember partners that we sell data to complaining about how high we had Saquon Barkley ranked last year, because that's just too high relative to ADP. And, people misuse ADP all the time. But Saquon's ADP was at the turn last year, and suddenly he ended up RB6 or something like that, but close to, if you get a top 5 running back with your first round pick, you did something right. You're likely in the playoffs and are making moves here. So anyway, I see a similar narrative this year, right? Last year, Jonathan Taylor was number 1 pick overall, far and away, easily the undisputed RB1 heading into drafts. Suddenly he gets banged up towards the end of the year. The Colts don't quite play like he's hoping. And now his ADP is back down to 14. It's at the turn, early second round or at the turn. I very much think that the same thing could end up turning around and happening here. I think Jonathan Taylor could easily have a bounce back. You're buying low on him now. You're getting a possible top 3 overall player at a second round price. Without contract things yet. His contract's coming due, right? Next year we're going to have this conversation here with Jonathan Taylor. But this year we'll be okay. Both teams had a lot of personnel changes around them. We talked at length about Anthony Richardson. I think somebody like that actually helps Jonathan Taylor a little bit. If for example, the defense has to have a Richardson spy because of how dangerous he can be, then suddenly that's one less guy to stack the box with and face Taylor. And Taylor's faced some of the most 8-man boxes out of anyone in the league over the last few years. I think this offensive line, we're split on this. We kind of RotoWire ranks them. We have offensive line rankings. We put them in the middle of the pack. They're about 13, which is a pretty big fall from grace because a couple of years ago they were running away top 3, so they're maybe heading in the wrong direction. But we throw the Giants all the way down at 28 here. So if you take those in any consideration here, theoretically Taylor should have the better line in front of him. I'm taking the bounce back a little bit more fresh given the time that he missed towards the end of last year, and just again, if it was general availability and both of them were on the same teams and we knew that contracts were set, it would go to Saquon. But I think I'm going to be more inclined to take Taylor now. Again, we're talking mid-July draft day dilemmas, right? When we do late August draft day dilemmas, things could be totally different. But if I'm doing a July draft here, I'm playing it safe and going Taylor.
Yeah, and Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, 2 stud offensive linemen for the Colts, did not play well last year. They're healthy for a large majority of the season and did not play well. You have Braden Smith, the right tackle, who was not healthy. He'll be back this season. If you believe the talent, and I really do, like especially Quentin Nelson, who's been
Absolutely
as close to a can't-miss offensive lineman over the past 3 or 4 years that we've had, then they should be fine. And I think the Shane Steichen factor with Anthony Richardson will help Jonathan Taylor even more. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. It feels very much like a guy that was consensus number 1 overall pick last year. He had, 5 games missed or maybe like 6 games missed, but he played technically in 2 of them with the high ankle sprain dealing, and he still got close to 1,000 rushing yards when Matt Ryan and other really bad quarterbacks were under center for the Colts. And you can say what you want about Richardson, there's a level of athleticism that should help him. So I think Jonathan Taylor, I'm completely comfortable with him in the beginning of the second round. So you have to back into the first round pick. I will also take Nick Chubb over Saquon Barkley too. And I've talked about this on a number of occasions with Jim Coventry, who is all in on the Browns this year. He's done a different betting article on him every week. It feels like, no Kareem Hunt there. Jerome Ford is your only backup. Let's just say it's now Nick Chubb who runs and catches the ball with an offense that has Deshaun Watson, another pass catcher in Elijah Moore, an offensive line that's pretty good, and a defense that's pretty good and probably controls the tempo more than we might anticipate. I think Nick Chubb is going to be like a top 3, 4, or 5 overall fantasy running back and is getting taken in that mid-second round, early second round range too.
Yeah, Nick Chubb with an ADP of 20. Are people just expecting some kind of fall off? Did he reach a magic running back age number? No, that guy's awesome. I agree that not having Hunt signed is going to help him. That team will be better. And there was just a poll they did. I don't know if it was NFL owners or coaches, but they did the top running back in the league, and Chubb was voted number 1 by his peers. He commands a certain level of respect, and he's a very safe pick. I definitely, I'm most certainly taking Chubb over Pollard, Henry, Jacobs, who are the guys behind him. I don't need to stretch there. And you're right. I could very much see taking Chubb over Saquon if Saquon continues to be disgruntled.
Yeah, any drafts that you are in with me, you can safely assume that if I have a late first-round pick and it's between Devontae Adams, Jonathan Taylor, and Nick Chubb, I'm going to take either one of those running backs. And that would go for, at this point, probably CeeDee Lamb, who I liked a little bit earlier this offseason, and I like the running backs more. That's where I'm at.
I don't know if he's in this office. Didn't Saquon? I remember seeing a video of someone sticking Saquon at like 7 overall on their.
Yeah. Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor in the Vegas draft that we did this past week when we were on our Circa Vegas retreat. Again, thank you, Circa Sports, for helping us have a lot of fun with that.
Those guys rule.
Jim Coventry took Nick Chubb and Jonathan Taylor 12 and 13. I think Saquon went to Jason Shabilsky at either 7 or 8, which is fine. And that's there's a difference. That was a non-super flex league. It's a full point
in a month from now, but
right.
I love that start for Coventry. Good for him.
Yeah, I think it was fantastic as well too. Frustrating because I was hoping Nick Chubb would fall, but we have too many savvy drafters in those things, and it's silly to try to anticipate that's going to occur. Here's one running back I did end up taking in the Vegas draft, and that's Travis Etienne. Not surprisingly, we had John McKechnie, our college football analyst for a long time now, and does a lot of the good stuff with the rookies. Had Jaymr Gibbs taken 2 picks after I did with Etienne. Now, I took Etienne at the beginning of the 3rd round, and then Gibbs went, 2 picks after that, so also beginning of the 3rd round. That's probably higher than his NFFC ADP. Etienne's at 41. Gibbs is around that same mark there, running backs 13 and 14 respectively. I really believe Etienne is in for a solid season. Anyone trying to talk to me about Tank Bigsby or Dearness Johnson taking the workload away from Travis Etienne has this all wrong. I want those guys to take workload away from Etienne. Yes, he broke out last season in large part after that James Robinson trade. But in my mind, Etienne's a 15 to 20 touch guy at the most, much like what the Cowboys want Tony Pollard to be at times last season, and certainly while Zeke was on the roster. I think Etienne is going to be one of the best pass catchers out of the backfield, certainly better than Big Spear, Ernest Johnson. And frankly, he's going to be somebody that gets a guaranteed 1,300 yards, whether it be running or receiving. And that's your running back 2 or 3 if you kind of play things a different way. So I love Etienne a lot. No disrespect to Jaymr Gibbs, who I think I like a lot more than some people around the office. But I think Etienne's got the high upside potential and in an offense that's really, really good, where I'm going to take him just about every time I can.
Yeah, you couldn't get a closer call based on NFFC ADP. Both of them, I mean, over the last month, Jaymr Gibbs is 40.76. Etienne is 40.82. We're talking six hundredths of a decimal point away. So this is a dilemma that you're likely going to have to face in the third round of a lot of drafts here. And this is one where, Joe, I honestly agree with you. You know, for the most part, even though there's been some exceptions over the last few years, I consider myself pretty rookie averse in fantasy. But that's not just all of it here. People tend to forget. Okay, so yeah, Detroit maybe stretched a little bit for using the early draft pick here on Gibbs. You know, when people weren't expecting him to go until the second round, and you'd think that that's enough of a cost to put into this that Detroit would want to use him. Detroit also signed David Montgomery 3 years, $18 million, and they certainly didn't sign him to sit on the bench. This is the same team and the same coaching staff, really, that let DeAndre Swift, who was breaking tackles and playing well when given the chance, they let him sit and gave Jamal Williams all the high-leverage touchdown carries. I see some similarities here, you know, in these types of backs and what they might be used for. And, you know, we don't know yet. It's still early in the year. We don't know how quick Gibbs is going to catch on to the whole scheme and what they're trying to do here. But there's a much bigger direct threat to Gibbs' touches in Detroit than there is to Etienne's in Jacksonville. So I'm going to be pretty low. Chances are I'll be pretty low on both of these guys. No, I'll get in on Etienne some this year, but I'm going to be pretty low on Gibbs this year. And when they're put head-to-head like this, to me it seems like it's a no-brainer. I'm rolling Etienne. I love the entirety of the Jaguars' offense this year. You know, they might be a 500 team. They might be a 500 team, but they are going to put up a whole lot of points. And yeah, so this is a pretty easy call for me. I was just surprised. I mean, this is the closest ADP that we're going to get, you know, when talking these dilemmas on the show.
Yeah, like I said, spoiler, we're going to talk about more Jacksonville Jaguar players in just a bit, because this is probably one of the more surprising dilemmas in that it actually is a dilemma. To me, it's not, and it has to do with a Jaguars receiver. So, you know, that I'm in on Etienne too, and you know, the AFC South plays the NFC South this year. Probably the 2 worst divisions in football. Maybe the NFC North is close. Definitely compelling from that perspective. Yep. Let's talk about those receivers before we do. So get a word from our.
We promised the guys 8. Can we do like 30 seconds on the one running back dilemma?
All right, go ahead.
Okay, Cam Akers versus Miles Sanders, right? We're talking RB21, RB22, right? I'm skipping both of these guys. Full disclosure, you know, guess who has I wrote here. Guess who has 2 thumbs and is taking the best receiver on the board at that spot? That's right here. But gun to my head, I'd taken Sanders. 4 years, $25 million. That's not nothing with how these running backs have been going. And to me, I see less competition from guys like Chuba Hubbard for Sanders than, you know, Sony Michel or whatever for Cam Akers. Also, we rank the Rams offensive line dead last in the entire league here. So they've got rookies starting. They've got existing injuries they're coming back from. It's just not good. So it's Miles Sanders over Cam Akers for me.
I don't mind Miles Sanders. And I think there's a bit of a downgrade on him currently, because he's going to the Panthers team led by a rookie quarterback who I at least have some reservations for. I think Miles Sanders might be pretty good, and I agree with you, is not going to get pushed by Chuba Hubbard from a workload perspective. We're probably doing another podcast on worst draft picks that you can make right now. Cam Akers is on my list. I think he is easily one of the worst, and frankly, it's one of those litmus tests. When I hear other draft experts say they like Cam Akers, I know, all right, yep, you're wrong. Great, want to be in your leagues, because there's no way in my mind he is going to be successful this year. That's a different podcast, probably
these
for a different day.
0.04 in ADP. Apart.
Yeah, not even. And I've seen Akers go way higher. Like if anyone gets overdrafted, it's Akers. Never jump the gun on Miles Sanders, which is fine. Like, I get that.
I just wanted everybody to know that. Okay. We have 3 dilemmas left for 2 positions. Let's get the sponsor word in.
All right. By now, this is for Reality Sports Online. Most of you have heard of Reality Sports Online, the most powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go and see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round options for rookies, automated contract and salary cap functionality. Man, and a lot more. I think it sounds complicated. It's not, I promise. The best thing about Reality Sports Online fantasy front office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires much more strategy, clearly. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this platform is here for you to test your mettle. Still not sure? Well, you can test out general manager skills for free in mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code RotoWire, ROTO-WIRE, to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. Or we had just mentioned it before with the wide receivers. This is perhaps, I think, the most puzzling draft day dilemma that I see right now. I might not like Cam Akers, but I understand why someone would take him over Miles Sanders. I do not understand how Jerry Jeudy is anywhere close in terms of ADP to Calvin Ridley. Right now, at least on NFFC current drafts, Jerry Jeudy is about ADP 44, wide receiver 19. Calvin Ridley is only a little bit before then, ADP 42, wide receiver 18 to 20 range.
And somehow in the drafts that have occurred here from between last night and today, I don't know who stretched on Jerry Jeudy, but he went up to 42, and Ridley's down at 44, and Drake London's sitting in between them. And I like Ridley way, way more than Drake London or Jerry Jeudy or even Amari Cooper, but we're starting to get close there. I like Ridley a lot this year. People forget he got a whole season off, not because he was injured, because he bet on a couple of games in Florida. Big whoop. Who knows, again, he didn't tear his ACL and sit out the whole season. He, got to relax, got to take a year off in the middle of his prime. If anything, his body should be right, and he should be ready to go. He's got arguably the best quarterback that he's ever had in his career. I think we can call Trevor Lawrence better than late-year Matt Ryan.
I think it's debatable, but that's actually a compliment to Trevor Lawrence because I actually think late career Matt Ryan really wasn't as bad as people thought.
Yeah, exactly. Is Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer? Who knows? We could debate that the whole
Different
show. Different podcast. Anyway, but yeah, we're going to give him the and now listen, in the Scott Fishbowl that I did, it wasn't even a dilemma at all because I took him at let's see, where did I put this down? I took Ridley at 5.06 and Jeudy didn't go until 8.07. So I guess we have a sharp league. Now I'm not necessarily super low on Jerry Jeudy. No disrespect to the man. I think the offense will do better. Russell Wilson has literally nowhere to go but up. And we'll see what Sean Payton can get out of these guys. But man, Ridley is just like the entire offense here is solid. Can you believe that Jerry Jeudy has yet to record a 1,000-yard receiving season and has just 5 career games of 100 yards in his career?
Yeah, no, it's shocking. It's been
Where
health,
do people
right?
think
It's
this
been
is
health
coming
stuff.
from?
Yeah, I don't know. I understand that Nathaniel Hackett was a hack. Like you could maybe put some of that bad Broncos offense on him.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put it entirely.
That was just last year, though.
We watched 15 primetime games of the Broncos last year, and they were god awful in 14 of them. I do not understand this. I think Calvin Ridley's a really talented wide receiver in a good offense system. And again, AFC South faces a bunch of crappy teams. Also faces a bunch of crappy teams in the NFC South. You are going to have Calvin Ridley automatically in your lineup every single week, and I'm not sure you say the same about Jerry Jeudy. I really don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the last time Ridley played 15 games, he was good for 90 for 1374 and 9 touchdowns, and he is going to be age 28. We're talking full-on prime for wide receivers.
Contract year, too.
Contract year as well, and for whatever reason, we list Christian Kirk number 1 on the depth chart over Ridley. I think Ridley's going to get back to wide receiver 1 territory.
I don't think it matters. I mean, that offense can cater to both, and if
1A,
one,
1B, yeah.
Yeah, if one's going to be better, I agree with you. I think it's Ridley.
Yeah.
This is a bit of an interesting one. It's a multiplayer one, whereas we've had mostly 2, maybe 3. So Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson, and then Tyler Lockett are all around ADP 64 to 68 in that range. And again, wide receiver 28 to 31. Of those 4, you have Michael Pittman, obviously now with a new quarterback, new offensive system. Brandon Ayuk broke out. I think that's fair to say last year, but gonna theoretically have Christian McCaffrey healthy, George Kittle healthy, Deebo Samuel healthy, and Brock Purdy not healthy. Deontay Johnson, you're pinning a lot on Kenny Pickett. Can he improve in year 2? Kind of has to, I feel like, even though no one really wants to discuss how Kenny Pickett actually wasn't very good last year. And then there's Tyler Lockett, who's getting pushed by Jackson Smith-Njigba, but also has been the picture perfect 1,000-yard receiver, kind of in the same way Mike Evans has, and Brandon Cooks too. So really interesting point for all 4 of these guys.
I went through this in my head, looking at all the stats, getting ready to go through this. I was actually ready to take Deontay Johnson as this, and I know a lot of people don't like him. I'll make the positive TD regression example here. He scored 0 touchdowns last year after having 8 touchdowns the year before. So, in case you didn't know, I'm sure every analyst has made this argument before. He only had 4 less red zone targets last year than he did in 2021. So something's got to give there. I do like Deontay Johnson, but really, I ended up taking kind of the boring play, and that's Tyler Lockett here. Now, I saw a Reddit post in the fantasy football, great community there, that were basically like, wait a minute, is Tyler Lockett so underrated he's finally overrated? And looking into it, I do have some concerns about Smith-Njigba pushing him and Geno Smith maybe having a little bit of a fluky last season, right? So I've got a little bit of concerns there, but Lockett he's 30 years old. He feels like he should be 35, right? He's been around for so long. But he's just so consistency. He's played 16 plus games in 5 straight years. He's had 8 plus touchdowns in each of those 5 years. Over 1,000 yards consistently. Each of those 8 to 10 touchdowns, 70 plus catches in 4 of them. He is as consistent as they come. And at this point in the draft, all these guys do have some question marks. Brandon Ayuk, too many mouths to feed. Is this breakout consistent? Michael Pittman, we just don't know about that offense. The last couple quarterbacks loved to feed Pittman the ball when he was healthy. We don't know if we're going to get the same out of Minshew Richardson. It's just kind of a question mark there, even though Pittman's undoubtedly the number 1 receiver on that offense. Deontay Johnson, he's awesome, and I like him, and I'm probably taking him in that ballpark as well if Lockett goes before then. But this ended up being me going with the boring pick and taking Tyler Lockett, because at this point in the draft, I like steady. I like to get my points, and Lockett seems to be the most steady out of that whole group.
Yeah, and I'll go even more boring yet. I'm not taking any of these guys. I don't want any of them. They have way too many question marks for me. I will be almost certainly taking a quarterback or a running back or Kyle Pitts or Dallas Goedert over this group, because it just is not an enticing spot for me whatsoever.
So, okay, let's look at the overall list then. If we're going to talk about, dilemmas here, Miles Sanders is in that group.
Yep, over him, over all these guys.
Over all these guys, DeAndre Swift, Dameon Pierce.
No, I hate both those guys.
Rashad White.
No, I guess I'll take Swift. I'll take Swift over these receivers.
Kyle Pitts or Deshaun Watson.
Yes and yes.
All right, so that gives us some. Yeah, see, I'd probably take Lockett just because, again, I'm perceiving this as safe, and I think he's going to be the man. Now, if Lockett's off the board, I might actually consider Pitts. I love, not to bury the lead with our next segment here, but I love where he's going.
Who are some receivers after the Lockett, Pittman, Ayuk range?
So I should mention that Mike Williams is right before them by a hair.
And is Mike Evans right after them?
Mike Evans is after them, but about 10 ADP spots down.
And I like Mike Evans over all those guys. So it's tough.
Mike Evans and Tyler Lockett, they feel like they're boring picks. They're not flashy. You don't have to be flashy to win your draft. If you take a whole team of high upside sleeper guys, your team could very easily finish in last place. So you don't necessarily have to be flashy. Don't be afraid of guys like Lockett and Mike Evans.
Yeah, you can really pick nits with Michael Pittman. I think you could definitely do it with Deontay Johnson. I know touchdown regression, blah, blah, blah. But I don't.
Deontay Johnson, he's a good route runner with good hands. He's going to get in PPR leagues. This discussion changes significantly.
Yeah, it does. And I also think Steelers' offense is going to be one of the worst in the league because Kenny Pickett sucks.
You could almost make a nowhere to go but up argument with Kenny Pickett, and he at least down the stretch.
No, I don't think people agree with that. I think people are like, he's a first round QB. It's like, well, no, that class was awful class. So great. I can't. It's like McDonald's being the best fast food options between Burger Kings and Arby's. Like, who cares? They all suck. Why are you happy about that? No, I think the Steelers offense
around, you just go hungry.
Right, exactly. Yes, thank you. Culver's always a proud sponsor of us, but not really.
Our unspoken sponsor.
We're trying, 5 years in the running here to get Culver's to support us in some capacity. No, I am like, you could pick a lot of holes of that. You could do the same with Mike Evans, though. As much as I like him, it's like, hey, you want Baker Mayfield thrown to him? No. Do you want Kyle Trask? No. And I think the Buccaneers offense is going to be really bad too. And I think that's where we're at right now in the NFL season, where there's a lot of haves and a lot of have-not teams. And unfortunately, most of these guys in that same criteria are going to be dealing with that. So let's move to the tight ends. We're talking about Kyle Pitts what that might mean for that position. Before we do so, a word from our sponsors from Fantrax. For you fantasy football players out there, is there something you wish your fantasy league had, or features that are missing from your current league? Well, like bonus scoring, for example, or custom schedules or playoffs, deeper team settings? Look no further, because Fantrax has you covered and is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for Dynasty, Keeper, Redraft, and Best Ball leagues. Create or join a fantasy commissioner league, invite your friends, and dominate your draft of the season. Fantrax is the top Dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Coming from another service, well, that's not a problem, because Fantrax can easily import any of your current leagues and rosters and customize if needed. Ever have a trade go wrong or make a mistake in dropping a player? Well, Fantrax Commissioner Tools help allow you to undo any move with one simple click. If there's anything lacking in your current fantasy league, fantasy manager has set, and Fantrax can help you too. Fantrax is running a special promotion that you won't want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com, RotoWire, today to enter for a chance to win tickets to any regular season NFL game for you and your entire league. Plus, you get $6,000 in spending cash. That's right, tickets for your entire league. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Go to fantrax.com/RotoWire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Okay, we mentioned it, the tight end ADP dilemma of all dilemmas. That's Kyle Pitts around that 72 range at tight end 5, or Dallas Goedert at tight end 6. I mean, honestly, I don't think you can go wrong, because I talked about those receivers right before in that range. I like the tight ends over that spot. I like Deshaun Watson over that spot, but it is a roster construction dilemma. And I think it's fair to mention that Kyle Pitts has been disappointing, even though he's done relatively well from a production standpoint. This might be his lowest ADP other than his rookie season. And even then, there are certain leagues where they're pushing him up higher. So how are you answering this tight end dilemma?
I'll go as far to say that this is probably the lowest we'll see Kyle Pitts' ADP in the next 5 years. I was very skeptical on him last year because I thought it's a little too high for a young tight end. Not that I didn't believe in his ability, because I certainly do. But I wasn't ready to pay that price last year. A 5th-round price, I am absolutely ready to pay, to a point where I might even target it. Yes, he had an MCL injury. He missed some time last year, but that shouldn't be an entire deal breaker for an entire physical breakdown, right? The same tools that had every single analyst in the entire building hyping this guy up to no end, calling him a Hall of Famer, all this stuff that way overhyped him last year, those same tools didn't just suddenly go away, right? He's still that dude. He can be that dude. Drake London is your wide receiver 1 on that team. Who is your wide receiver 2? Let's see. Mac Hollins?
Nope.
Scotty Miller?
Yes. It's a 500 receiving yard wide receiver 2. It's not an enticing thing.
Exactly. No, the right answer is Kyle Pitts is your wide receiver 2, and you get a tight end next to him, and you can put him in that tight end spot in your league. Now, of course, there are some question marks about quarterback play. What does Desmond Ridder bring to the table here? Is he going to be able to find him consistently? Is he going to target him accurately enough? Which, by the way, it shouldn't matter with someone as athletic as him. He should be able to go get balls.
You'd think.
You would think. You would think. Again, they add, I don't know the guy's body. Maybe the MCL. I don't think the MCL is an issue after a whole offseason.
Well, I think it's Arthur Smith. That's where I'm putting the blame on. I wrote down my notes. I think Arthur Smith is the new Mike Shanahan. But in terms of, instead of hating running backs like Mike Shanahan did, or fantasy managers who used running backs, I think Arthur Smith just hates fantasy players in general, because other than Drake London, there really wasn't a fantasy asset from a receiver perspective. That offense is wrong. Like that's not how you are going to be successful in the NFL. Maybe you can win a one-off game, but if you're going against good teams in the playoffs, which is what most teams are striving to do, a lesser version of the Titans offense will not be successful. I'm sorry. So I'm hoping Arthur Smith can kind of pull his head out of his ass and use Kyle Pitts a little bit more, because a little bit more makes him well worth a 4th round or 3rd round pick where he was going. All it takes is maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns, right? That was the other part of things, is that both Drake London and Kyle Pitts weren't being utilized in the red zone. And I do think this is a anywhere but up scenario, because Marcus Mariota was not very good last year, not very good at all. And when Desmond Ridder came in, Drake London saw a big increase. And I think Kyle Pitts now in year 2 with his new quarterback could see a similar jump.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest risk with a guy like Pitts is the coaching staff and how they're going to use him. So you're right. That is the number one concern here. But I'm going to believe in the physical tools and take this as the ultimate buy low opportunity. Again, the theme buy low, post-type sleeper, if you want to call it that. I think he's the definition of that. And I'm going to go ahead and buy him at this 5th round price here.
Would you still would you take Goedert? I mean, is it like you're fading him altogether, or you're fine?
It's not because I don't like Goedert. It's because I'd like Pitts at this price. Now Goedert, no knock. If I didn't like the receivers and running backs that were available to me at this point, I could see taking Goedert. But I'm also not 100% sure. What about his 55 catches for 702 and 3 touchdowns makes him tight end 6 overall? I think that's just because this is where the huge drop-off is. Yeah. Is he going to be that much different than Evan Ingram, for example? Both of these teams have a lot of mouths to feed, and it could be some touchdown variance that makes the difference between which one of those guys ranks higher on the entire season here. But Goddard's fine. He's not a complete fade by any means, but I do group Goedert closer to Darren Waller and Evan Ingram than I do Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, if I wasn't taking Travis Kelce, my strategy has been thus far in drafts just to fade tight end altogether. We'll talk about guys that we like and values a lot. I've mentioned Irv Smith a number of platforms. New Bengals tight end theoretically gets that Hayden Hurst production. That's more like your tight end 20 to 28 that I think can go a little bit higher. Juwan Johnson's a favorite for a lot of people. Again, if I like Derek Carr, Juwan Johnson theoretically mid same range. Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, 2 rookie tight ends that are getting drafted pretty low. I think there is a point, though, where Dallas Goedert fall, and I think I took him in the 7th round of our Vegas draft, was fine. Because at a certain point, there's just a floor production that you're happy with that you don't need to pray Irv Smith gets.
It's not sexy, but you don't have to make a splash with every single pick.
Right. So I will take Kyle Pitts, and I think he is a sexy pick for where his ADP is going for.
Oh, yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with Dallas Goedert at all, and I think is actually safer than Evan Ingram, who I know signed that big deal just a couple days ago.
And you're going to get some flack from league mates probably for taking Pitts even in round 5. They're like, oh, you're going down this road again, right? And I know there's going to be a lot of people who took him last year and got totally burned that won't even touch him. And that's why his ADP
is where it is.
Is where it is here. So take advantage of these people. Every season's a new season. Buy low. Get these guys at their right price. Try to not go at these market fluctuations and react to them so wildly. But this is the time where, this is exactly where you want to be buying someone like Pitts.
Hey, before we head out, Jake, give the listeners an idea of where we can get more of the RotoWire product. And I know we got the iOS apps out right now. And stuff
absolutely.
Like that.
So you can see down here, rotowire.com/pod gets you a 48-hour trial to everything on the website here. If you're just looking for help with your draft, which I know a lot of customers are, they don't want to sign up for the full NFL season, which, by the way, we offer the ability to, import your league and get to customized advice tailored just to you all season, on top of our regular Ask an Expert feature and all of our featured columns throughout the entirety of the year. But I always like to, if I had 30 seconds to push one RotoWire product, it would be the NFL Draft Kit app for iOS devices. This is $7.99 one-time fee. It gets you basically our on the website you can get our downloadable draft softwares. We have a web version of this too, but this gets you something to use on your iPhone or your iPad, and it is absolutely brilliant for keeping track of drafts. You can keep track of 10 slow drafts at a time if you want to. You can do your auctions and have it adjusted for inflation, have live adjusting values based on who's been purchased already. There's just so many things that you can do with the app, and it's a cheat code, you guys. You get all of our latest player news, all of our latest injury status. You get to read all of our outlooks, and a ton of articles are there on the app too. So it really is a cheat. I shouldn't even be saying this. I really shouldn't be saying this because it costs a fraction of what it would to subscribe to the entire website, but you get the very big bulk of the good features that you have. So I strongly recommend this iOS product. Please download it.
Was number 1 on the App Store, I think, pretty recently, or at least from the sports app perspective.
Every year we've reached number 1, and we stuck around there for a couple weeks in August. I think it was number 2 when I last checked. It'll be number 1 again pretty soon. It is consistent. It's it's there every year. It's a solid product to draft with, and I use it for a ton of my drafts here when I like to do the drafting for my computer, right? And I'll maybe tag along with my phone. You can obviously you can track every pick and put them in there, but there's also a draft just my team feature where you can just slide and go my team or other team if you want to do super fast, and not spend too much time marking off players. There's just so much you can do with it. It's a cheat code to getting the whole RotoWire package here. So if you do get that and you enjoy it, we appreciate leaving a nice 5-star rating and review, as we do of this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, all your favorite podcast platforms. A nice 5-star rating and review would help us out a ton. What else do we got to say, Joe? Like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure.
With YouTube.
Yeah, all the shebang with that.
All 18 spots you can find us listening. There's a special thing that you can do to help us out. But if you appreciate the content, we very much appreciate you tuning in and clicking those buttons as you see fit.
Yeah, we're back and ready to go. I mean, we are now in full NFL season schedule mode. So every Tuesday, you'll hear Jake and I on this platform, along with many other places as well, where we can list all your podcasts. And excited to continue doing this and excited to get you prepped for draft season. Obviously, once we get to the waiver wire period, you and I, our jobs will become much more distinguished, right? Because we are the arbiters of who to sign and who to bring on and all the questions we get. But until that point,
we got to make up
the strategy talks.
Yeah, we got to make up like 6 more shows before the season. One of them will be our over/under win total, which is historically
moneymaker.
Been a moneymaker. So stay tuned for that as one of the ones towards the end. But if you got topic ideas, general strategy things, just anything in general you want to hear us about on the show, help us out and pick our next podcast topic. We'd appreciate that very, very much, and hope to hear from you guys at RotoJake, at JB at Fantasy Sports. There we go. I had a
Yeah, you did. It's perfect. All right, that does it for us on the July 18th edition of the show. Of course, we'll be back again next Tuesday. Thanks everyone for listening.